We're talking about spirits, and while I've had a lot of spirit encounters, it seems like many of you have too. Today we're covering even more of my subscribers' ghost encounters, and there's some in this that are really, really interesting. Up first, we have such a fascinating story. I was going to leave this one to the end, but honestly, it's so good, I just want to share it now. I'm going to call this one Housekeeping Hell, because that's pretty much what's being described here. This isn't my actual first ghost encounter, but it's one of the most profound I've had. I clean houses for a living, and one house in particular really stands out. From the day I was called to come give the owners an estimate, the moment I walked through the door, something was off. I attributed it to a different decor style than I would have chosen for the type of house it was. I was so wrong. They accepted my price, and I began cleaning bi-weekly. The activity started in such a small way that I, at first, didn't even notice. Now, looking back, I should have. The first odd thing were these super greasy handprints on the French doors that the owners swore they didn't do. It was almost like hands dipped in petroleum jelly. I'd clean it off, and they'd be back before the owners got in from work. It caused a bit of aggravation at first, as they assumed that I'd lied and hadn't cleaned it. In the end, I filmed myself cleaning to prove that I was. Then the next thing was that no matter what the weather, or whether or not I was running the Hoover, the lights would flicker as I went from room to room. I eventually stopped using the lights. Then came the voices, like whispers. I thought it was just the wind, but it was creepy, so I started using earbuds and music to not hear it. Then the banging started. It would literally shake the light fixture from the floor above. I actually asked the homeowners if they had a roommate that didn't have a car, because I heard on multiple occasions someone come in and go upstairs, and yet no one was there. One day, I was on the phone with my husband while working, and he said, "Don't let that dog bite you." I said, "What dog? There's no dog near me." He said he could clearly hear a very loud dog growling like I was about to be ripped apart. Then there was the surfboard incident. They collected surfboards and were on their tips against the wall. Something caught my attention from the corner of my eye, and I noticed that one of the boards was moving back and forth, like a metronome. And I stood there watching it like a child, and then I noticed it was starting to leave a mark on the wall. So I went to stop it, and before my hand even touched it, it stopped, right on its tip, like it had never been moving. There was no reason at all for it to be moving like that, and it hadn't disturbed any of the others on either side. That was very off-putting, and the very last day I cleaned that house, the air was very, very heavy. And I was cleaning as fast as I could to get done, but the very last room had 2 big dressers with 2 nightstands, a total of 18 drawers. I went around the room, dusted all the furniture, cleaned the mirror, and straightened the bedding. I stepped out of the bedroom just 1 step to get my vacuum. And when I came back in again, every single drawer in that bedroom was open. The clothing even fluffed out of them. That's 18 drawers, opened in less than 10 seconds, and I heard nothing. Absolutely nothing. I left immediately and never went back. There were other things in between all these events, but these were the key moments. And I'm not a crazy lady who thinks all houses are haunted. I've only had about 5 encounters in 10 plus years of house cleaning. The rest of my stories are from personal time encounters. I still don't know what I'd call whatever this was in this house, but it definitely wasn't a person. It almost felt demonic at the end, if I'm honest. Thanks for reading, and I hope you choose my story for a video. I have a few more if you're interested. I definitely am. This one is absolutely incredible. The drawers opening? That is absolutely bonkers to me. I've seen a lot of strange things. I have never seen anything like that. So I agree that this definitely doesn't sound like a standard haunting. This sounds very poltergeisty to me, not a technical term. So as far as I know, poltergeist is German for noisy ghost. But they are considerably more than that. Poltergeists can be highly destructive, highly disruptive spirits. No one is entirely certain where they come from. Some people believe them to be human spirits that have gone on to become more. Other people believe them to have never been human in the first place. Whatever they are, they're usually highly distressing to be around because their behavior will typically ramp up over time. They start with little things, bumps in the night, whispers, noises, and then they ramp it up further and further and further, in some cases getting to the point of physical harm. And this very, very much stands out as a poltergeist to me. And what makes it worse is this is a poltergeist that has a lot of energy and we have no idea where that's come from. So it seems as though their behavior is ramping up in order to get rid of you from that space. So initially, my first thought is, I wonder if anyone else has experienced this. Had they gone through a lot of house cleaners? Have they gone through a lot of staff that refuse to come back again? Now, I don't know that much about the house cleaning world, but do people usually accept your first offer, or do they typically want you to bring the price down? Because if they would usually expect you to bring the price down and they've just snapped you up straight away, that to me is a sign that perhaps they're aware of this kind of behavior and activity, and maybe they've had to have a lot of people previously. Now, when it comes to ghost encounters like this, typically I would recommend people to ignore the behavior, because poltergeists especially really want attention, and when you give them that attention, they feed off the energy and the emotions that you give them, which then gives them more power to be able to do more. So typically I would recommend to ignore them. But in this case, I actually think that you ignoring this spirit has only fueled the fire further. Now, that's not me saying that this is in any way your fault. This spirit has a lot of energy and I have no idea why. It could be that there are objects in the house that are very, very potent and powerful. It could be that the property is built on a highly energetic location. Perhaps there are ley lines. There is something really wrong, though, in this situation if the first thing that manifests from this spirit is ectoplasm, which is what I am pretty certain that petroleum-like substance that made the handprints would have been. Now, when you think ectoplasm, you think Ghostbusters, or at least I do. It's something that is primarily seen in movies and TV shows because it is very, very rare to manifest. You will occasionally see it by certain spirits in certain locations, but usually it's not something that people have encounters with. And for that to be the first thing that this spirit has done is to manifest ectoplasm, which is essentially a physical manifestation of ghost energy. It's really, really hard to do. And that is alarming to me that that's where this spirit went to first. Now, the handprints might have been a representation of them. It might have been a manifestation of them touching physical objects, or it might have been them presenting as human as the first step. And then the more you've ignored them, the more they start ramping up their behavior. You get the flickering of lights. That's really commonplace when it comes to ghosts and especially poltergeists because their behavior requires a lot of energy. You then have the whispers, the things moving. But the one thing that stands out to me, besides the obviously ectoplasm bit, is the dog. Now, I actually don't think the dog is real, and that's not me saying that what was heard wasn't really there. What I mean is, I don't think that that was actually a dog at all. I don't think there is any spirit of an animal in this property whatsoever. This very, very much sounds like this poltergeist is manifesting this sound, perhaps because it's something that scared people in the past. They are essentially going into their box of tricks, and they are trying everything to get rid of you from this space, and that's actually really scary because to have so much energy that you were able to manifest ectoplasm, that you were able to manifest sound and movement and flickering lights and all of the whispering and the start and stopping of movement and the literal opening of all of those drawers in such a short amount of time, to me says that this could have gone really, really bad. The next step up from this is physical contact. That could be bruises, that could be scratches, that could be burns. This could have gotten a lot worse, so I'm really glad that you managed to get out of this environment when you had the chance. And I do wonder what is happening with this place now. I mean, were there a lot of unusual objects in this space, perhaps very old items or high energy items? Like, that would be really interesting to know, because this spirit is feeding on a lot of energy. This level of poltergeist activity is something that I've heard of a few times in the entire time that I have been researching, looking into, and experiencing ghost encounters. And so that's what makes this so incredible. I would love to know what everyone else thinks in the comment section. Do let us know as we're going along. Add your own input. I would love to hear it. I'm sure the people whose stories these are would love to hear it too, but I am very glad that you got out when you had the chance, because this could have gone a lot worse. And then also we have the idea that these activities are manifesting in digital devices, which is what we spoke about in the last video. Now, that story was the Discord ghost, where we had this ghost manifesting its voice on a Discord call, and it ties into the whole idea that we can be using voice recorders and electronic devices to pick up the spirit world in a way that we can't pick it up with our standard ears. So you never heard the dog, but the dog was picked up over a phone call, and that's kind of tying back into those ideas, which just makes this so incredible. And I probably shouldn't have put this as story 1, because I'm not sure there's going to be any beating that one. That one is actually incredible. Okay, moving on. The next story is almost the polar opposite of the previous one. Now, I've titled this one The Spirit in the Boat, but I definitely have my own ideas as to what this is, and I would love to hear yours too. My story is from way back in 1979. I was 8 years old at the time. My best friend, Sharon, and I spent most of our time together. My family life was difficult, to be honest, and I see now, looking back with an adult's perspective, that my friend's mum, Carol, probably felt quite sorry for me, so she was happy to let me spend pretty much all of my time with them, which I am eternally grateful for. Anyway, Carol used to walk for miles. She would always be going for long walks, and myself and Sharon loved going too. On this particular day, it was the summer, and she decided to go to a lovely place by a small river. It was a very pretty meadow surrounded by trees and just off a road. To access this lovely place, there was a small iron bridge-like structure. It had steps that went up to just above the trees, along a few feet, and back down into the meadow. Across the meadow was a little river. It was more accurately the size of a wide stream. We were particularly eager to go because we really enjoyed the peace and beauty, and even though it wasn't a huge meadow, it was incredibly picturesque. As we sat in the grass making daisy chains, eating a sandwich and chattering away, I heard a faint splashing coming from the river, just around the bend. It seemed to get louder, as though whatever was making the noise was getting closer. As there was a lot of overhanging bramble and nettle, I couldn't see from where I was sat what it could be that was making the sound. So I quietly stood up and wandered closer, trying to see what was apparently coming down the stream towards us. I was stood right at the corner and very close to the edge of the bank, trying to see round, but the undergrowth was so dense. After a very short while, I could eventually see the bow of a very small wooden rowing boat coming towards me. I was so close to the edge, I could see, as more of the boat emerged, the details of this little boat. I remember it vividly to this day. The wood was wet and looked a little rotten. I could see the water making little swirls as the oars were moved in the usual, almost circular motion. And then I saw the figure that was rowing the boat. The sight I was confronted with made me step back in fright, because it was the shape of a person, probably about the height that I was at the time, but it was a brilliant, fluorescent white shape with no discernible features, just a bright, white human shape, rowing gently and calmly. It did not look up or acknowledge me at all. As you might imagine, I was very frightened, too frightened to speak. I plucked up the courage to look away and turned my head towards my friend and her mum, but they were still chatting on the grass and seemed unaware that I'd even moved from our picnic. When I returned my gaze back to the river, the boat and its occupant had vanished. I ran back to Carol, chattering wildly about the man in the boat, and she gave me a hug and said to stay with Sharon as she went to look for herself. Of course, there was nothing to see apart from the overhanging trees and usual fresh undergrowth. No boat, no glowing figure. After that, and for a few weeks, I was so fascinated with the idea of seeing it again that I would pester my mum daily to take me there so that I could see the man in the boat. I think it probably freaked her out quite a bit because she refused, point blank. She eventually forbid me to talk about it again. I can't say that I blame her, but my friend's mum believed me. I think my face probably said it all. I visited the river many times after that, well into my teenage years, but I never saw it again. I'm just going to say here, this is the second time I've had to change my battery whilst filming this video. I've only been filming for an hour. That's not normal. I would usually have to change my camera batteries every hour and a half, 2 hours. To have gone through 2 batteries in an hour, that's really, really weird. Okay, I'm going to change another one. Some of you will no doubt already know exactly what I'm thinking. This, to me anyway, is a member of the fair folk. Now, the fair folk or fairies, little people, good neighbours, wee folk, there's so many different names, look very different from one another. We have some that are very tall and elf-like and others that are small and goblin-like. We have others that are represented as a being of light. They're literally made of light. And this is what I suspect was encountered on this particular day. The fact that you are the only person who saw it, that you're probably the only person who heard it, likely means that you tuned in to a different plane of existence, or you're more sensitive to fair folk than other people around you might have been. And the fact that the moment you broke your concentration and came back again, it was gone, probably means that that moment, that connection vanished too. That doesn't mean that that spirit was no longer there. It probably just meant that you were no longer seeing it anymore, which I think is just so incredible. Now, usually when people have encounters with the fair folk, it isn't this kind of light being, but this is now the second story we've had in these videos that involves this kind of white light being, which I think is just absolutely incredible. Now, the fair folk really do use the world in a very similar way as we do. So they will travel from place to place. We see this in the trooping of the Fae, which happens a couple of times a year. And generally speaking, during liminal times and in liminal places, encounters with the fair folk are more commonplace, and we can have a glimpse into the world as they perceive it and the world that they are interacting with. It's the same world, but we're just tuning into different wavelengths. Maybe that's the best way of describing it. And so in this moment, it really seems like you tuned into something that was different to everyone else. And maybe that particular individual realized that they'd been spotted and they vanished, or maybe something in that moment just broke and then you couldn't see that they were there anymore. It's quite likely that they weren't able to see you either. It may well have just been a one-sided thing. They're just going about their day, they're just traveling around, and you just happen to have caught sight of them, just as sometimes there are spirits that might watch us and observe us without us realizing it either, which makes it just so cool. I wish we could know all of the times that these kind of encounters happen, but you're probably not alone, especially in sites like this. This is very much liminal space between the shore and the water, especially on a bend as well. You're very much talking about liminal space, a very natural environment as well, where you're more likely to see fair folk. But I might not be right, so do let us know what you think this is. If you do have a different opinion, or if you have the same opinion, maybe you've had a similar experience, feel free to submit that if you are interested. I didn't mention it at the start, but this is open to submissions. The links will be in the description box. And that is my third battery dying. I have filmed for 3 minutes and 40 seconds and my third battery is now dead. Now, to be fair, it wasn't fully charged, but it should have lasted more than 3 minutes, 48 seconds. Now, the last story for today is kind of a different tone again. We've had something that is very, very negative. We've had something that is completely neutral. And then we have a story that's actually pretty positive. I've had a number of spirit encounters in my house. All have been very warm. The first was a few months after my mother died. Her full-body apparition appeared at the end of my hallway. I was sitting on the sofa in the lounge late at night with my dog sitting next to me. I was reading a book, and from my peripheral vision, I caught someone standing about 20 feet away, looking at me. As I looked up, my dog started to bark and jumped off the sofa at the same time. As he hit the floor, he started towards the hall but stopped almost immediately, because she was gone. My mother and I had had a conversation about death, and she said that she'd wished her mother had visited her after death. My mother had just given birth and couldn't travel, so she couldn't return to visit home to see her mother just before she passed. I told my mother that she was welcome to come back and visit me, and she did, but I wasn't prepared. The other encounter was one that was ongoing. We called her the Blue Lady. Again, sitting in the lounge, facing another direction, she always appeared by the dining room table. Again, my peripheral vision caught something, and I looked up. I saw what looked to be swirling smoke, like what you'd see above a cigarette, but I don't smoke. I started to see her a lot, always in the same place, always about the same time, mid-afternoon. I knew it was a woman, and she appeared to be from circa 1910. I could see her boots, her ankles, and the length of her skirt, which sat just above her ankles. I could see her skirt up to about mid-thigh, but then it all became swirly smoke above that. I saw the same thing every time, and she, too, was looking directly at me. After seeing this for months, I finally brought it up to the man I was living with. We were out to dinner, and he was a total pessimist. I told him what I saw, and he said nothing. After I finished telling him what I saw, we ate in silence for a few minutes. I asked him if he believed me, and he said yes. Silence again. I finally asked why he believed me. He said, "I've seen her too." Where? In the same place. She's always looking at me. I regret to say that I eventually asked her to leave, and she did. It was a bad decision on my part. There have been a number of entities in my house. It's actually very normal. They never give off bad vibes, and I no longer mind them being there. I wish the lady in blue would come back. I just don't want any to scare my dog. Now, this one is one that I think is really, really interesting. Now, I'll be honest, all of them are really, really interesting. Any ghost story to me is incredibly interesting. But I find this one to be particularly curious because it appears that you are very, very prolific at seeing ghosts more than anything else. Most people tend to see them just out of their corner of their eye. They'll never see a full-body apparition in their entire lives. And yet you seem to be seeing quite a lot of them. Now, the first one is one that involves a lot of energy because there is a deep relationship there. This is your mother, and so there's enough energy to manifest fully. And yet the second encounter, it almost seems like there's not enough energy involved. Now, full body apparitions take a lot of energy to manifest, like a lot. And so a lot of the time you'll hear bumps, bangs, knocks, you might have strange smells, orbs of light, but a full body apparition takes a lot of energy. And sometimes only bits of an apparition can manifest. So some of the most famous apparitions in really old buildings that have a lot of encounters are just feet walking across the floor, or it'll just be floating heads, or sometimes it's floating hands, sometimes it's just from the waist down. And I suspect that this is kind of a similar situation. Now, there have been previous stories. For instance, one that I spoke about in a previous video, I think it was actually my ghost encounter video, the first one in this series, of the Roman soldiers that could only be seen from the knees up, and it's because they were walking on what was a Roman road, and so the Roman road was about a foot lower than the modern floor. And so the Roman soldiers were walking on the road that they knew, which meant that you could only see them from the knees up. I suspect, though, that this isn't so much about the fact that the floors or perhaps something is blocking you from seeing the top half, and more that it just takes so much energy to manifest that the rest of the time you're seeing this like misty smoke above them. Now, this kind of misty smoke is actually really commonplace to see. So sometimes you'll catch it on camera. Some people will even see it in real life, where all of a sudden a room goes incredibly misty. And I've actually had this happen to me. I've walked into a space and it looks like someone has been burning a cigarette or burning a lot of incense, or perhaps something's on fire and there's a lot of smoke in that room. But it doesn't smell like there's a lot of smoke, and maybe no one else is noticing this strange smoke, and then all of a sudden it'll just vanish again like it was never there. And sometimes you'll have lots of people that see similar things. So I think it could well be that this is almost like a partial apparition, where the feet are able to manifest, but nothing else is present, which I think is really, really cool, because it's obvious that you're able to see full body. What was that? Did you hear that? No, but like actually, what was that? I have no idea if that will have picked up on the audio. I really hope it did, because that is cool. Okay. Yeah, I've noticed that while I'm filming the ghosty videos, I get a lot more activity in the room that I'm in, whether it's like batteries dying, whether it's like technology failing, strange sounds, flickering lights, and the like. That one was weird though, because I actually have no idea what that was. If it didn't pick up on camera, it was like almost like a bird squawking, like quite a high-pitched grating sound, except I'm filming this at 12:15 at night, and it is deathly silent. There is no noise in here at all. So that was weird. Okay. So the fact that you're able to see full body apparitions but not this one definitely makes me think it was an energy issue, or it was simply how they were choosing to present to you. But this was definitely a spirit that was aware of their presence in this space. Because while some spirit encounters might be echoes of the past, we're talking like stone tape theory, strong energy being repeated over and over again, or perhaps someone who doesn't realize that they're dead, this individual was very much looking straight at you, and they responded to your request to leave, which makes me think that this individual was definitely aware of their death. They were aware that they were in this space. Now the question is, do you know the history of your house? Could this person be attached to the house and they are no longer manifesting now that they have made you uncomfortable? In which case, you might be able to ask for them to return or ask to see them again, because if they are essentially contained within this space, it may well be that they're attached to an object or they are linked to the building's history, and in which case they aren't necessarily able to go anywhere. So if you were to request for their return, they may well come back again, or they may have been a spirit that was simply residing in that space because they enjoyed that environment, but they were very clearly aware of you because that request was listened to immediately. And that is where I would typically recommend people to start if they want to get rid of a spirit in their space. First place to start is to ask, because a lot of spirits, they aren't trying to cause you harm. They aren't trying to be like that spirit at the very start. They want to be very courteous to you. They don't want to make you uncomfortable. And so if you ask something of them, they will usually oblige. Like, I don't feel comfortable. Are you able to not enter this space? You can ask that. You can ask that they not enter your bedroom or your sleeping space. Depending on, obviously, the age of that spirit, you might want to change the terminology that you're using. But you can ask if you don't want them to be in your bedroom. You can ask if you don't want them to be in your kitchen because they scare you while you're cooking. You can ask them to leave if they make you really uncomfortable. You can give them a place where they can go instead, so say a spirit vessel that they can use. You can even give them space on altars and the like if you've asked and they're willing to work with you. If that doesn't work, then you can give a more forceful request, you can do some cleansing, and then you can start working on protections and banishing and the like. But generally speaking, I'd say start with just requests. Being polite and requests are usually the best way to get somewhere with most spirits. Now, I'm never going to say all, but with a lot of them, it is a good place to start. So those are the encounters in this week's video, and these have got to be some of the most incredible that I have spoken about so far. I should have left the one at the start to the very end, but that was just an incredible one to start with. That is such a rare encounter to have, and it might have been awful to experience, but that level of poltergeist type activity is absolutely unbelievable. I mean, I've been in places with poltergeist type activity before, and if you would like me to talk more about that encounter, do let me know and I'm happy to do that. But I've never had anything quite to this degree. So if you would like to get involved, if you have your own first ghost encounter, or you've had a sighting of the Loch Ness Monster or Bigfoot or some other creature sighting, I would love to have all of your stories if you are happy to share them on a video. I will leave the links down in the description box for anyone who does want their own stories shared. Now, we have got a lot in, so I have a lot to get through, but I'm trying to mix it up and put very different stories together. So let me know your stories if you're happy to do that. If you would like to see the rest of the videos in this series, I will leave it linked on the end screen. Feel free to check out all of the ghosty ghouly videos. I love talking about the subject, and I know that so many of you love it too. If you enjoy these episodes, please give them a like. It means a lot to me. Let me know your opinions on all of these stories, and if you do enjoy these ghostly encounters, feel free to subscribe. And if witchcraft is more your thing, I try to post witchy content every single Wednesday. I'm trying for Wednesdays again. I'm not sure if that's going to stick, but I'm gonna give it the good old college try. And with that being said, I hope you have a marvellous magical day. I hope you have a very spooky, very special, very spirity Sunday, and I will see you in the next video. And thankfully I didn't have another battery die, but that was really weird. 3 batteries dying. I'll be honest, the first 2 really are strange to me because they were fully charged batteries and they died in like 20-25 minutes a piece, which is weird. Like really, really weird. So tune in next time to see if any other strange things happen. I don't know if anything else got caught on camera because last week the weird flickering light I didn't see as I was filming. And I also didn't even really catch it while I was editing it. It's only when I uploaded it onto YouTube when I noticed it, which is just really weird because I'm usually really observant. Anyway, with that being said, I'm going to go and hopefully not see any more spirits for tonight. I think I would like a nice peaceful sleep. Okay, bye. Oh, good job I checked that, isn't it? I don't know what happened. Okay, this is just a quick little thing, right? I have noticed that in this video and my last video, I've had technical issues when filming the Ghosty Ghouly videos. In my last Sunday spirit video, I had a candle back here, like a fake candle, and it kept flicking on and off and on and off. Now, I filmed 3 videos that day. 3 back to back, and it didn't happen in any of the other videos. It only happened in the one where I was talking about ghosts. And then with the editing software, the last time I did a ghost episode, my recording software for my microphone stopped recording like 30 minutes in, and I don't have that happen usually. And then today, 6 minutes into my recording, it stopped recording. Weird. That's strange. I need to fix the lighting. Oh, that's a bit bright, isn't it? That's a smidge bright. Oh, is that too bright? Oh, that's... definitely too bright. Is that better? Oh, is that better? Too blue. Very white. That's what I normally look like, though. Or yellow. I normally go for the yellow, but maybe I should go for the white. I am possibly the most indecisive person you will ever meet. Not even joking. It's like a problem. Yes, that looks better. Okay. Turn it down a smidge. Ooh! Oh! Yeah, let's go. I don't know what that noise was. This is why I shouldn't film at 11 o'clock at night. What cracked? That was a really weird noise. Do I do I even like this? Yellow, white. I told you I was indecisive.